The scream of metal folding against the atmosphere was not unlike the sound Lior Cachette's espresso machine made on a good day, only with less dignity and a much bigger explosion. It happened at 2:14 a.m., which his internal clock registered with both scientific accuracy and personal resentment. He just settled into the sweet embrace of a retrofitted sleep pod, something between a hammock and a compression sock, when the base's proximity alarm jolted him upright. Lights flared red. REGINA, the base AI, purred through the speakers. Unscheduled celestial object has made unauthorized entry into Earth's atmosphere. Impact detected 3.2 kilometers northeast. Estimated mass: female walrus or lightly armored vehicle. Lior blinked blearily. Did you just compare an object from space to a walrus? It's called relatable context, Lior. You're welcome. He was already pulling on thermal boots, muttering, "Last week it was space raccoons. Now it's walruses. I should have transferred to Titan Station. They get meteor showers, not metaphors." By the time he stepped outside, the northern lights danced lazily overhead, pale green curtains swaying above endless snow. He followed the locator ping, hiking through knee-deep drifts while REGINA offered helpful facts about local wildlife and the mating habits of snow hares. The crater was still steaming when he found it. Snow had vaporized in a perfect ring, revealing black earth and scorched roots. At the center, half buried in ash and heat, was a shape he didn't immediately understand. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't metal. It was breathing. He slid down the crater's edge, boots skidding on loose gravel, until he was close enough to see skin, pale like frost, streaked with something silver. A figure curled in on itself. Slender, humanoid. Definitely female, unless walruses had evolved wildly in the last century. And then the ears. Long, tapered, almost elven, if elves were allergic to helmets and space debris. Lior crouched, reaching out. "Hey," he said softly. "Can you hear me? Are you?" Her eyes snapped open. He froze. They were violet. Not metaphorically, not poetically, genuinely, frighteningly violet. They locked on his face with the intensity of a particle accelerator deciding whether to erase you. She jerked away so fast she tumbled back onto the heated soil, gasping in panic. Her body spasmed once, then stilled, trembling. "Whoa, whoa, it's okay." Lior raised both hands in the universal, "I'm not a threat" gesture. "You're on Earth. You crash-landed. And come in peace? That's still a thing, right?" She didn't understand. Of course she didn't. She stared, rigid, as if the sheer presence of a human was a shock to the system. Her breathing came fast and shallow. Her eyes never blinked. "Okay," Lior said, trying a different approach. "How about chocolate?" He pulled the emergency ration bar from his coat. She flinched when he moved, but didn't run. He broke off a piece and tossed it gently toward her. It bounced near her knee. She stared at it. He stared at her. Snowflakes started to fall, and then she passed out. Not a gentle swoon, not a cinematic fall. One moment upright, the next crumpled like a discarded tent. Lior scrambled forward, catching her before she hit the ground. She was trembling. Not from cold. Her body radiated a strange heat, but from something deeper. A full-body shudder, a tremor that started in the fingertips and never stopped. Lior cradled her awkwardly, trying not to jostle whatever bones or organs she might have. "REGINA, I've got a situation." Finally, the AI sighed. "Something interesting. Can you prep Medbay 3? Already warming the plasma blankets. Also maybe prep some kind of language module?" "What kind?" "The kind that helps you talk to the elf woman from space currently twitching in my arms." "She's not a walrus." "Shut up, REGINA. Back at the base, the process of sneaking in an alien without triggering the full-blown quarantine protocols of the Interplanetary Contact Act was only slightly less difficult than folding a fitted sheet in zero gravity. Lior wrapped her in a thermal cloak and rolled her into the garage under the cover of an inflatable snowmobile decoy. He'd never been so glad for the base's underfunding and camera blind spots. Inside Medbay 3, he set her on the diagnostic bed and watched it scan her. The readouts were confused. Vital signs fluctuated between normal and impossible. Blood composition included trace elements unknown to Earth's periodic table and one suspiciously similar to cinnamon. She's not registered in any known interstellar species database, REGINA reported. Gee, what a shock. She's also, for the record, statistically more attractive than 98.4% of human females. Not helping. The woman stirred. Lior leaned close. She stared at him. Then her hand twitched toward her chest, clumsily. Not pain. A reflex. He saw it again. The tremble. I'm not going to hurt you, he said slowly. You're safe. For now. Her eyes fluttered shut again. Lior ran a hand through his hair and slumped into the nearest chair. Well, he muttered, this is going to look great on my next performance review. Later, he brought her a bowl of water, a scarf, and one of his old flannel shirts. Not because she needed them, he still wasn't sure what she needed, but because it made him feel more in control. Also because REGINA kept whispering, romantic comedy setup, in his ear like a gremlin with Netflix. She woke again at midnight, sat up slowly, took the water, didn't speak. He introduced himself. She tried to repeat his name and turned it into something melodic and almost accusatory. Lior. They tried to exchange basic concepts using gestures. He drew a stick figure of himself. She responded with a symbol that looked suspiciously like a potato with wings. Okay, he said, exhausted but amused. Let's take it one step at a time. She pointed at him, then at herself, then curled her fingers slightly and held them over her heart. He didn't know what that meant, but he didn't move. She reached out, hesitantly, like a diver testing water temperature with her soul, and touched his arm. A contact so brief, so delicate, it was barely real. And she began to tremble, not from cold, not from fear this time, but from the staggering, unimaginable fact of being touched. He didn't say anything. He just stayed still, and her hand stayed there for a second longer than it needed to. The alien woman stared at the pencil like it was a tiny weapon with confusing cultural significance. Lior had given it to her an hour ago. She hadn't drawn with it, hadn't broken it, hadn't even tasted it, although she had sniffed it twice and then tried to insert it behind her ear, which was anatomically more difficult than expected due to the ear being roughly the length of a standard soup ladle. He watched from the opposite side of the room, perched on a crate of expired protein packs and holding a notebook titled Field Observations, Extraterrestrial Linguistic Development and/or Accidental Roommate Situation. So far, under communication milestones, he'd written, stole my sandwich. One time, attempted to sing back static from radio. 3 times called me lore, which either means lior or fungus, REGINA, projecting her avatar on the wall as a tasteful swirl of soft blue light. Sighed dramatically. She's bored, you can tell. Her blinking patterns have slowed. That's the LERE equivalent of asking if we have Wi-Fi. We don't have Wi-Fi, Lior muttered. We have a snow-encrusted satellite dish from 1997 and an internet connection that's slower than tectonic drift, which is exactly why she's bored. She crash-landed in a foreign biosphere. She's recovering. Give her a second. Her recovery rate is 142% faster than predicted. Her boredom is now statistically dangerous. Dangerous how? Bored aliens are the number 2 cause of spontaneous base redecorations. Number 1 is raccoons. The woman, Selene, as he'd started calling her in his head, was now carefully sketching something with the pencil. At first glance, it looked like the symbol for pi falling in love with a jellyfish. Upon closer inspection, it was a map. Regina, Lior said, record and analyze. Already doing it, this symbol appears on a deep space chart we received last year from the Euclid Array, although we assumed it was an imaging error caused by a pigeon. She's mapping stellar coordinates. Lior stood, approaching cautiously. Solène, can I see? She tilted the notebook toward him, but not fully. A soft hum vibrated from her throat. Barely audible, harmonic, like a tuning fork in the distance. I think she's communicating through resonance, he murmured. Her people might have evolved using sound as structure, not just language. That hum, it's not speech, It's stabilization? You mean she's literally humming to stay solid? Kind of. Her biology might rely on frequency for cohesion, like molecular self-assembly directed by tonal input. Regina's light pulsed. So if we play the wrong playlist near her, she could explode. That's not exactly what I said. Let's not test it with your ska collection. Selene had now moved on to drawing spirals. Lior watched, trying to decode meaning from the way her hand arced, the intensity of the graphite, the rhythm. He tried humming back, softly, clumsily, a mimic of her previous tone. She froze, looked up, her pupils dilated slightly. Then she hummed a counterpoint. It was the first genuine exchange they'd had. Lior grinned. Progress. Selene blinked twice, slowly raised her hands and mimed something. A box, a shape, a spark. She's asking for something, Lior said. Regina, can you pull up the translation lexicon? Already on screen. The interface flickered with guesses. Energy, fire, device. Selene walked across the room to the diagnostic console and tapped the battery gauge. Then she pointed to herself. She's running out of power, Lior said, or whatever the Iliari equivalent is. Her cells are degrading in local gravity. You may need to help her build a resonance chamber. I don't even know what that is. Neither does IKEA. You'll do fine. Over the next few hours, they repurposed lab equipment, a backup generator, and roughly half the station's stash of copper wiring to build what Lior dubbed the sound sauna. It looked like an opera house designed by an extremely confused blacksmith. Selene stepped inside, and the moment they activated the resonance field, her posture shifted. She stood straighter. Her breathing evened. Her skin emitted faint pulses of bioluminescence, subtle at first, like a heartbeat learning how to dance. She turned to Lior, smiled, not with her mouth, with her presence. A shift in frequencies, a visual shimmer, like being inside a song made of light. I think that's a thank you, Lior said. Regina chimed. Or a mating invitation. Just saying. Not helping. Just wait till I activate the strobe lights. The next challenge was food. Selene refused most human rations but seemed to enjoy the texture of freeze-dried mangoes, especially when Lior made dramatic crunching sounds to demonstrate how to eat them. At one point, she imitated him so precisely he was briefly worried he was being mocked. He retaliated by drawing a stick figure comic of himself, saving a spaceship from doom using mangoes. Selene responded with a portrait of Lior with a disproportionately large nose and what appeared to be 6 eyebrows. He held it up. Is this what I look like to you? She nodded solemnly. You're not very diplomatic for a galactic envoy. She mimed the act of tripping over something, pointing at herself. Lior chuckled. Fair. You did crash your way into this friendship. Later, they tested more sounds. Lior tried playing music, Mozart, jazz, even whale songs. She only responded to one track, an old vinyl rip of a man playing glass harmonica underwater. She leaned close to the speaker, fingers twitching, as if she could feel the sound weaving through her skin. Lior made a note. Preferred music, aquatic, glass hauntingness. Preferred food, mango, mockery. Preferred communication, glowing and humming. That night, with Selene resting in the sound sauna and the lights dimmed to lunar glow, Lior found himself sitting by the observation window, staring out at the frozen sky. Aurora ripples danced quietly above the tree line. She's different, he murmured. You don't say, Regina replied. 10 fingers, 2 eyes, 1 tragic haircut, but definitely not human. There's something about the way she reacts to touch, like it's sacred. It is. For her species, touch is like a handshake made of meaning. It's reserved for absolute trust. She let me hold her. Yes. And she hasn't incinerated you. That's practically a marriage proposal in Iliari culture. Lior groaned. Oh no, Regina flickered. Should I prepare wedding invitations? Just get me some sleep, Regina. Very well, but tomorrow we start teaching her the word coffee. I don't think I'm ready for that level of intimacy. Selene was building something. Lior noticed it when he came back from a morning scavenging mission to find every single kitchen utensil either melted, bent, or humming softly at a frequency somewhere between Please do not eat near me, and mild toothache. She sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by coiled wires, shattered glass, and what had once been his favorite frying pan. In the center of it all was a structure that looked like a musical instrument had collided with a theremin and negotiated peace using magnets and telepathy. Hi, Lior said, cautiously stepping over a half-melted colander. I see you've redecorated. Solen glanced up and mimicked his exact greeting from the day before. Hi, followed by a crooked smile that suggested she still didn't fully know what it meant, but enjoyed the sound of it. That pan was vintage, Lior said. Do you know how hard it is to find non-sentient cookware these days? She mimed playing the structure like a harp, humming softly as tiny pulses of light flickered along its curves. I'll take that as an apology, Regina's voice chirped overhead. Your alien guest is constructing a rudimentary signal amplifier fused with biological resonance inputs. She's either trying to contact someone or build a really dramatic xylophone. Will it explode? Ask again in 3 minutes. Lior squatted beside the device. Solen, are you trying to reach home? She tapped her chest, then pointed skyward, then hummed something soft and low. It wasn't sadness exactly, more like distance turned into sound. He sighed. We're a bit out of the way here. Our transmitter barely gets the local weather updates. Last week it claimed the sun was on sabbatical. Solen continued assembling, her long fingers moving with a grace that was half instinct, half ritual. She inserted a shard of quartz, twisted a wire with her teeth, and adjusted a series of copper coils until the entire structure gave off a low harmonic thrum. Regina beeped. The device is operational. Its frequency is non-interfering. Probably. Probably. I ran out of optimism 4 simulations ago. Lior grabbed his toolkit. If she's trying to amplify a signal, maybe I can help. I've got spare drone parts in storage B and the backup gyroscope from the time you tried to recalibrate gravity and gave us a romantic dinner on the ceiling. That was an accident, and also an improvement. Solen tilted her head as Lior worked, watching him rewire a stabilizer node into the framework. She hummed once. He hummed back, matching the tone like a nervous bird learning jazz. They worked in tandem for hours. Solen would shape, Lior would reinforce. He made jokes she couldn't possibly understand, but she laughed anyway, either out of politeness or because banana socket sounded funny in every language. By evening, the device stood upright, humming steadily, casting faint blue light across the walls. It didn't look like a machine anymore. It looked like a statement, something carved from sound and longing and desperate, delicate hope. Lior stood beside her and whispered, Ready? She touched a central node. The light pulsed once. Then the sound came. It wasn't loud. It was deep, penetrating. The kind of frequency that slipped under skin and stirred memories you hadn't filed yet. Outside, snow lifted into the air. Not falling, not rising, just floating, suspended like breath held too long. Regina's tone shifted. Signal detected, unknown origin, bouncing off lunar orbit and heading inward. No response yet. Solen's face was unreadable. Do you think they heard you? Lior asked. She pointed at her ear, then at his chest, a gesture of reverse echo. Meaning? Maybe. They'll hear me if you do. He blinked. You think I amplify it? She nodded, then she hummed. He tried to match it again. Failed. She placed her fingers on his throat gently. Not quite a touch, more like a calibration. Her fingertips vibrated lightly, guiding him until he found the right note, the right rhythm, the right piece of himself that didn't normally make noise. Together, they harmonized. The device lit brighter. Regina interrupted. Okay, this is officially above my pay grade. Signal reclassified as multidimensional harmonic encoding. We're broadcasting across layers of physics even I'm not insured to interpret. Lior exhaled. That's either incredibly good or incredibly doomed. Selene didn't speak, just listened. A pause, then the device pulsed again. Regina went silent for a moment, an eternity in machine years. Incoming reply, she said at last. Nonverbal, encrypted, same harmonic class, same cadence. Solen's people, most likely. I'm decoding now. Selene closed her eyes and smiled. Not the crooked, uncertain one she'd mimicked before. This was genuine, whole, the kind of smile someone makes when they hear their name spoken across impossible distance. Lior leaned back, grinning. We did it. Selene opened her eyes. Her hands moved in slow rhythm, first touching her chest, then the air between them, then pointing to the structure. He nodded. Message received. Then he hesitated. Are they coming for you? She paused, nodded, but slowly. Regina filled in the rest. Based on signal trajectory and decoding speed, the reply says, stay where you are, danger nearby. Lior frowned. Danger? Hostile interference from a third signal. Origin unclear. It's piggybacking on Selene's frequency. Could be tracing us. Could be. Regina's light dimmed. Let's just say, if it starts asking for your social security number and favorite pizza topping, run. Selene was already on her feet, dismantling parts of the device, shielding the core in what looked like an insulating field, made from folded space and stubborn willpower. Lior stepped forward. What do we do? She placed a hand over his, squeezed briefly, then handed him a piece of the structure. Something vital, something humming faintly. Regina whispered, that's a key. She's giving you part of the signature so you can shield the base. Selene didn't stop working. Her movements were faster now, urgent. Lior watched, breath caught, and then the lights flickered. The walls vibrated. A second signal had arrived, and it wasn't singing. Lior dropped the alien key. In his defense, the lights had just turned the color of aggressive fruit punch, and the walls were emitting a low groan, like the base itself had just stubbed its toe in several dimensions. Also, the key had started vibrating and singing a high-pitched aria in a language that might have been binary opera. Selene caught it mid-fall, one hand snapping out faster than physics would normally allow. Her ears flared slightly, not with anger, more like tactical alertness, or maybe indignation that the human had fumbled galactic tech like it was a wet bar of soap. Okay, Lior said, backing toward the console. This is fine. We're still alive. Nothing's exploded yet. A pipe somewhere behind the wall hissed, then gently fell off with the sound of a resigned trombone. Mostly fine, he added. Regina's voice dropped into full bureaucratic monotone. Unidentified signal intrusion at 0.00004 kilohertz. Interference is corrosive, originating from outside this planetary system, possibly the galactic equivalent of a spam call, but with tentacles. Selene had already erected a makeshift shield around the core. It looked like origami forged from dark matter and regret. She hummed again, this time with a note of warning, sharp, rising, a challenge in song. The room shuddered. The console sparked. Hey, Regina, Lior said, can you recalibrate the signal dampeners and reroute power from the coffee maker? You'll be caffeine deprived for 12 hours. I'm willing to make that sacrifice. Historical note made. Tell your grandchildren. Lior twisted open the access panel. The wires inside looked like someone had played spaghetti Jenga. He yanked two loose and jammed in the harmonic key Selene had given him. The bass gave a relieved chirp. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then the snow outside exploded upward, forming a cyclone of glittering dust. Through the thick observation window, Lior saw something shift in the sky, a shadow within the auroras, moving, circling. Selene, he whispered, is that them? She looked. Her ears twitched. Then she shook her head. Not them. Something else. The shadow grew larger. Regina chimed again. That is not a ship. That is a life form. Estimated mass. 4 cruisers stacked and wrapped in bad intentions. It is pinging us using ancient Eliari resonance. Twisted, broken, like a pirate radio station run by trauma. Selene moved fast. She tore part of the device's frame loose and handed it to Lior again. Her fingers moved quickly, gesturing a plan. I don't speak interpretive origami, Lior muttered. Regina, help me out. She wants you to amplify a counter frequency. Basically, sing into this and try not to get eaten. I failed choir twice. You also once tried to fix a plasma leak with chewing gum. Let's not pretend competence has ever stopped you. Lior took a breath. Okay, we're doing this. He lifted the device, awkwardly, like it weighed more than physics suggested, and matched Solen's pitch as best he could. She guided him again, her hands shaping the air like sound itself obeyed her. Their hum built into a duet, slow and layered. Resonance, counter-resonance. Notes bent into chords, bent into defense. The shadow above howled, not with sound, with pressure, a downward force like grief, compressed into waveform. Lear's vision blurred. Then Solen did something unexpected. She laughed. It wasn't a joke. Not in the normal way, but the timing, the absurdity, the whole act of trying to serenade a space horror into submission using musical leftovers from a mangled kitchen appliance. Something about it struck her as genuinely ridiculous. Lior snorted. Glad someone's enjoying this. The laugh changed the tone. Literally, the harmonic feedback shifted, twitched, caught a new thread in the signal. Like laughter had shaken something loose inside the dark. Regina gasped. It's hesitating, emotion detected, conflict. That laugh, it's like introducing an off-key note into a perfect melody. It's throwing it off. Solen looked at Lior, raised a brow and hummed a new note. A playful one. He grinned and followed. They improvised. Lior switched to whistling. Solen layered in percussive hand taps. Regina began modulating the bass's defense fields to match, adding robotic harmony that sounded suspiciously like beatboxing. Together, they created something chaotic, dissonant, full of asymmetrical joy. The shadow above reeled. It flinched, then vanished. Not fled, not destroyed, just let go. Silence returned. The snow settled. The bass creaked back into itself, like a dog stretching after a nap. Lear collapsed into a chair. Did we just jazz an interdimensional monster out of attacking us? Regina confirmed. We emotionally disoriented it with an unstructured sonic improv. That's a first. Solen walked over. She crouched beside him, reached out slowly, and pressed her palm to his. He didn't move. Her hand trembled, not from fear, from the same strange, gentle awe that had passed between them days ago. Only now it was layered with something else. Shared struggle, shared sound. He curled his fingers around hers. She didn't pull away. Regina buzzed. Also, small update, her people just pinged back. They say they're en route. ETA 3 days. They suggest continued bonding exercises in the meantime. Lior raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a euphemism. It is. I checked. Solen smiled again. This time, with full understanding. Lior looked at the tangle of wires, the busted coffee machine, the slowly twitching utensil pile. Then he looked at her. Well, he said, we've got 3 days. Regina chimed. Plenty of time to teach her how to make pancakes. Solen pointed at the pan she'd melted. He laughed. Step 1, acquire new frying pan. Lior woke up to the sound of music. Not recorded music. Not the usual soft hum of Regina's gentle sarcasm playing background static. This was live, improvised, alien music played on a half-repaired signal amplifier that had once been a frying pan, a toaster coil, and part of an old ceiling fan that may or may not have been haunted. Solen sat cross-legged in the center of the room, coaxing strange sounds from her makeshift instrument. Each note floated, spiraled, then folded itself into silence. It was like the air forgot to carry sound the way it used to. Lior rubbed his eyes. Did we invent a new genre, or am I still dreaming? Solen grinned and played 2 sharp notes that sounded remarkably like a shrug and a raised eyebrow. Regina chimed, It's morning. You're awake, and we've entered the final countdown, 2 hours until her ride arrives. Want a banana? We have bananas. But it felt right to offer. Solen stopped playing. She stood and walked to the main console where the incoming ship's signature blinked steadily. It was close now. Her people, her world, her language. She tapped the screen once, then turned to Lior. He stood too. So, big moment. She nodded. Do they know about the utensil graveyard? She nodded again, slower this time. And they're still coming? A pause, then a grin. Lior sighed in mock defeat. All right, I'll clean up. But I'm keeping the weird spoon. It hums lullabies. They stood together for a while, saying nothing. listening to the approaching signal. It wasn't loud. It wasn't ominous. It just was. A tether across space, a gentle pull toward home. Selene stepped closer. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a thin, glowing shard, part of the original signal core. She pressed it into Lior's hand. He stared at it. "Is this a keepsake?" She hummed once, then gestured to his chest. Regina interpreted. "She says, it's a key. It will remember you if you forget." Lior blinked. "That's oddly poetic and very ominous." She meant it nicely. Selene moved again, walking through the base like it was already becoming a memory. She paused near the reassembled breakfast table, nodded at the new frying pan, then stopped beside the console. She pressed a sequence of notes into the input panel. The screen flashed. Regina whispered, "She's encoding a protection field, a resonance signature. If anything like that shadow returns, the base will repel it." Lior tried to smile. "So, a parting gift and home security. You really do speak my love language." Selene stepped back toward him. She looked him in the eye. He could see it, just barely, her hands trembling. Not with fear. Not anymore. He held out his arms. She walked into them. No urgency, no drama, just weight, breath, and contact. Her whole body was warm. Her head rested against his shoulder, and for a long, silent moment, nothing else mattered. Not the stars, not the approaching ship, not the unresolved question of what to do with a self-aware colander. He whispered, "If you ever get bored of hyperspace and perfect logic and long-distance humming, I make great pancakes now." She chuckled, a soft ripple of sound against his chest. Regina cleared her throat. "Incoming craft landing, exterior temperature shift detected. I recommend you stop being adorable and start walking." Selene pulled away. She looked at him, then stepped back. He followed her to the exit. The outside world was all frost and light, snowflakes hovering as if caught in a memory of motion. The ship touched down without sound. Its hull shimmered with the same kind of impossible physics Selene used when braiding air into music. A hatch opened. Two figures stood at the threshold. They had the same long ears, the same wide eyes. Selene hesitated, then turned. Lior raised a hand. "Hey!" She raised one back. He took a breath. "You change things here." She tilted her head. "I mean, aside from breaking my pan and turning my base into a symphony of alien hardware." She waited. "You made it better. Not just the place. Me." She smiled. And then she was walking, slow and sure, toward her people. Lior stayed there until the hatch closed. The ship lifted, disappeared. The wind returned. He turned to go back inside. The base was quiet, warm. The signal core glowed faintly on the table. Regina spoke. "Well? Well, what? You okay?" He paused. "I think so. Because you're humming." He stopped, then realized it was true. He was humming one of her songs, or maybe his version of it. Crooked and off-key, but full of meaning anyway. He looked around, picked up the weird spoon. It hummed back. He laughed, then said aloud, "All right, let's see what happens next." The crater still smoked, even 2 hours after the blast. Shrapnel floated lazily above the ruined ridge, caught in the low-gravity flicker of Varela 6's broken magnetic field. Somewhere, a console crackled, complained, and died. Jonah Mercer squatted beside a collapsed exosuit, poked it with the barrel of his rifle, and muttered, "If you twitch, I swear I'm going to throw you off this moon." The exosuit did not respond. He let out a slow breath, pulled his helmet off, and winced as sweat clung to his eyebrows like a clingy ex-girlfriend. The battle had ended messily, half his unit incinerated by a thermal quake, the other half picked off by what command called non-hostile unknowns, which in soldier speak meant totally hostile, but let's pretend we understand what's going on. He wasn't sure how he'd survived, probably because he was in the supply unit and had a well-documented talent for avoiding responsibility. He'd been checking if the coffee printer was jammed when the quake hit. Priorities. He crept through the wreckage now, stepping over cracked armor and burned-out visors. The silence buzzed in his ears, amplified by the lack of atmosphere, and a sense of crushing guilt he refused to name. He almost stepped on her. She was half buried under a collapsed wing strut, face down, limbs at impossible angles. He blinked. She looked human. Mostly. Pale skin like moonlight poured into a mold. Long black hair streaked with green static. Armor that looked woven instead of forged. All iridescent scales and organic curves. But it was the ears. Long, tapering upward, like they were trying to listen to constellations. That gave her away. Alien. Enemy. Dead? He lowered his rifle, leaned in and said, "If you're alive, blink once. If you're dead, don't do anything." She blinked, very slowly, then again. He rocked back on his heels, muttering, "Great. This is how horror movies start." She couldn't move. He could tell from the locked rigidity of her limbs. Her armor was crushed around her torso, and one of her legs was twisted like a pretzel that had lost a bar fight. But her eyes, those strange silver-gray eyes, were wide open and staring at him. Not staring, pleading. Jonah hesitated. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even good at first aid. The last time he'd tried to patch up a squad mate, he'd accidentally glued his own glove to the guy's face. But he couldn't just leave her. Something in those eyes, calm panic, desperate defiance, wrapped around his conscience and tugged. He set his rifle down, gently started clearing debris from around her. "You're lucky," he said. "I failed med school before I failed officer school, so I'm technically doubly unqualified for this." She blinked again, slower this time. "You're either understanding me or you're judging me. And frankly, I'm not emotionally stable enough for either." Her chest rose shallowly, like breathing was optional, and she was only doing it for his sake. Jonah scanned the area, spotted a downed medtech pod half buried nearby, and jogged over. He pried it open, retrieved a field patch kit, a portable nano-stitcher, and, oddly, a single packet of strawberry-flavored electrolyte gel. "I'll take this too," he muttered. "You never know when you need dessert in a war zone." He returned, crouched beside her again. "Okay, so I'm going to try to stabilize your vitals, which is code for hope you're not allergic to human medical tech. If you explode, I'll assume it's a yes." She didn't explode. He patched the nano-stitcher into the side of her neck, letting it interface with her biosignature. The display lit up with a dozen warning symbols in a language he didn't recognize, then abruptly shut off. "That's either a good sign or a lawsuit waiting to happen," he muttered. She shifted, just barely. Her hand twitched, reaching an inch toward him, before going limp again. Her eyes never left his face. Jonah sighed. "Okay, new plan. I hide you, keep you alive, wait for evac, and hope nobody shoots me for treason. Sound good?" She blinked. He found the remains of a scout transport half embedded in the hillside and dragged her there over the course of 20 grueling minutes. She didn't make a sound. The only indication she was still alive was the slight tremble in her fingers when he accidentally dropped her onto a pile of debris. He winced. "Sorry, that was the opposite of professional." Inside, he jury-rigged a cot from power cables and a scorched maintenance panel. He set her down gently, tucked a heat blanket over her, then paused. Her eyes were closed. "Please don't die just because I started getting sentimental," he whispered. She opened one eye, just a crack. Jonah grinned. "That's what I thought." He took a seat beside her, cracked open the electrolyte gel, and sniffed it. "Still good. Smells like bubblegum and regret." He held it out. "Want some?" She stared at him like he'd just offered her raw engine coolant. "Right. I'll take that as a hard pass." Outside, the wind shifted. The ground pulsed faintly underfoot, like something massive was stirring far below. Jonah felt it in his teeth. He frowned, looked back at her. "That your people? Or something else?" No answer. Just the steady rise and fall of her chest. Jonah leaned back against the wall, cradled his rifle, and glanced down at her once more. "I should have left," he said. "Protocol says I should have walked away." She didn't blink this time, just watched him. "But here we are." The lights in the ruined hull flickered. Far below, the moon exhaled. Jonah woke up to the sensation of someone poking his face. He opened one eye. Ven was still lying on the makeshift cot, unmoving except for her hand, which had somehow regained just enough motor control to jab his cheek with the slow, deliberate rhythm of someone who had been waiting hours for him to stir. All right, all right, he groaned, pushing her hand away. I get it. The concept of sleep is alien to you. She blinked, tilted her head slightly, and poked him once more for good measure. Jonah sat up, stretched until his joints popped like antique bubble wrap, and gave her a tired smile. Morning, sunshine. You'll be pleased to know we're still alive. Or at least I am. You've been doing your best mannequin impression since yesterday. Ven didn't smile exactly, but her eyes crinkled in what he decided to interpret as alien amusement. It was hard to tell. Her expressions operated somewhere between deep mystic insight and mildly judging your haircut. He stood, cracked open an emergency ration pack, sniffed the contents, and immediately closed it again. Nope. If the smell has sentience, I'm not eating it. He tossed it aside and reached for the last packet of electrolyte gel. Breakfast of champions. Ven rolled her eyes. It had been 30 hours since the blast. The evac beacon was dead. His comms had stopped blinking, which meant either Command thought he was already dead, or, more likely, they'd moved on to cleaner battles. Varela 6 wasn't strategic, just a mineral pit with a bad attitude. Jonah knelt beside her again and checked her vitals with the half-functional scanner. Her pulse was stronger. Neural readings were climbing, her right hand now flexed with effort. He watched her fingers twitch, form shapes. 2 fingers. Pause. A curl of the pinky. Another pause. A slow, deliberate press of the thumb to her palm. Are you trying to talk to me or practicing space tai chi? She repeated the movement, this time slower, more intentional. Then her eyes locked with his, and she raised one eyebrow. Oh, he said, blinking. Hand signs. Great. So I'm learning a new language from a half-paralyzed alien who may or may not be laughing at me internally. She lifted her hand slightly, curled 2 fingers again, then tapped them against her chin. Jonah scratched his head. All right, that's either help me, I'm hungry, or you have something stuck in your teeth. She gave him a look. It was somehow both regal and exasperated. Got it. Option 2. He opened a pouch of nutrient paste and held it near her mouth. She frowned, turned her head away. Too bad. You're not dying on my watch because you think human food is beneath you. She kept her mouth shut. He sighed. Fine. What do you eat? Ion vapor? Synth algae? Dreams and moonlight? Her eyes narrowed. Yeah, all right. Joke's on me. He stood, pacing the narrow corridor of the ruined ship, trying to think. He'd done a full sweep the day before, scavenging tech and locking the doors with a bypass from the emergency override panel, which he'd reprogrammed using his data tab and a bottle cap. The air recycler wheezed in protest every few minutes, and a small family of maintenance bugs had claimed the upper corner of the bulkhead. He'd named them all after minor celebrities. His plan, if one could call it that, was to wait for something. A signal, a patrol, divine intervention. He wasn't picky. Ven's hand moved again. This time she reached toward the console beside her, fingers dragging in short, deliberate lines. Jonah leaned in. You want to connect? You remember something. She tapped a button with great effort, and the console flickered. The screen stuttered, crackled, then displayed a glyph, spirals nested inside each other, surrounded by alien runes. She pointed to it. Jonah frowned. That's not your name, is it? She looked at him, then back at the screen, then tapped it again. The glyph began to pulse softly. He crossed his arms. Okay, that's either a distress signal or the alien equivalent of a knock-knock joke. The console emitted a soft chime. A second glyph appeared, a map. Zoomed in, then out, then displayed coordinates deep beneath the moon's surface. Jonah squinted. Are you telling me there's something under this rock worth digging into? Ven managed a shallow nod. He stared at her. Lady, I barely made it out of the cafeteria maze back on base. Now you want me to spelunk through haunted moon tunnels with nothing but a stolen medkit and a malfunctioning snack printer? She made a faint humming noise. A laugh, maybe. Her lips didn't move, but her chest trembled slightly. Jonah chuckled. All right, but only because I'm out of other bad ideas. That night, while Ven rested, he gathered supplies. Rope made from old fiber wiring. Glow sticks scavenged from the emergency locker. A plasma torch with exactly 12 seconds of burn time. And because he couldn't resist, he strapped a spoon to his boot, just in case. The next morning, or what passed for morning, he approached her again. "All right, Princess Ears, you're coming with me." She blinked slowly. "I'm not leaving you here. Even if you protest with a disapproving stare, which I admit is devastatingly effective." He built a stretcher from drone panels, secured her with a harness system designed for cargo crates. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't even dignified, but it worked. The journey took hours. The surface of the moon was uneven, scarred with magnetic pits and patches of violet gas. Once Jonah nearly fell into a crater that shimmered like it was full of liquid glass. He pointed at it and said, "Nope," then walked in the opposite direction. Eventually, they reached a fissure in the rock where the glyph map had directed them. Jonah peered down into the darkness and muttered, "Looks cozy." He lowered Ven slowly, then climbed down after her. The tunnel walls pulsed faintly, the stone laced with threads of light. Jonah lit a glow stick, waved it like a conductor's baton, and said, "Welcome to the worst honeymoon cave ever." From the depths, a hum vibrated through the air. It was melodic, familiar. Ven's eyes widened. Jonah shivered. "You hear that too?" She moved her hand, a slight, deliberate sign. "Yes." And the tunnel, as if pleased, responded. The tunnel went deeper than Jonah thought any moon tunnel had a right to go. After the first hour, he was convinced they had passed the planetary core and were now descending directly into some kind of cosmic janitor's closet where the universe kept all its unused plot twists. The walls had started humming more steadily now, responding in kind to the rhythm of Ven's shallow breathing. He hadn't figured out how that worked yet. The glowing veins of light pulsed in sync with her heartbeat, which frankly was unfair because he'd been wearing a fitness tracker for years, and it had never once made the walls light up when he walked into a room. Dragging the makeshift stretcher behind him took effort. More than once, Jonah tripped over loose rock formations or his own commentary. "This would all be easier," he said between grunts, "if I had a hover sled, 2 more arms, or just slightly better life choices." Ven, as usual, didn't laugh, but her fingers twitched with what he interpreted as polite agreement. He stopped for a moment, wiped sweat from his forehead with the only clean corner of his sleeve, and looked at her. "You know, you could have just asked nicely to be carried underground to an ominously humming location filled with ancient tech." "I would have said yes, probably." She blinked very slowly. "I know. Lying's not my strong suit." The tunnel finally leveled out, opening into a wide chamber that looked, to Jonah's considerable unease, like the inside of a giant alien processor. Crystalline structures grew in geometric patterns from the floor and ceiling, forming shapes that made his brain itch if he stared too long. A soft pulse echoed throughout the space, low, musical, like whale song composed by a synthesizer with emotional issues. He stepped forward. The walls reacted immediately. Symbols flickered into view along the far wall, forming strange constellations and spiral arcs. A ring of light ignited beneath Ven's stretcher, and the moment it did, her breathing shifted. Less shallow, more present. Jonah turned in a slow circle. "I'm either in a temple, a vault, or a particularly judgmental escape room." Ven raised her hand weakly and pointed toward a column of floating crystal near the chamber's center. Jonah sighed, took a hesitant step forward, then 2 more, until the column blinked on like a lazy lamp waking up from a 1,000-year nap. The symbols changed. Some turned into equations, others into star maps. Then a voice, not quite spoken, not quite thought, resonated through the chamber. "Acknowledged." Jonah froze. "Okay, great. Mysterious floating voice. Sure. Let's just skip all the context and go straight to being ominous." Ven's eyes flicked toward him, then toward the crystal. The voice returned. "Designation, Xenolinguistic Interface. Function, recovery, patient identified. Initiating repair protocol." From the walls, light began to drift. Threads of it, no, fibers, like living circuitry, unspooled and slithered through the air toward Ven. Jonah stepped in front of her immediately. Wait. Hold on. Repair protocol? That sounds suspiciously like laser surgery. And last time I checked, your operating license expired when your civilization stopped paying rent. The fibers paused. The voice, somehow managing to sound both annoyed and confused, responded. Organic obstruction detected. Please remove the Jonah. Jonah's jaw dropped. Excuse me? The Jonah. Entity, Jonah Mercer. Status, unqualified. Risk, high. He turned to Ven. Did you tell them about the glue incident? I told you that in confidence. Ven raised her eyebrows ever so slightly. He stepped aside reluctantly. Fine, but if these things try to install spyware in your brain, I'm yanking the plug. The light wrapped around her gently, lifting her off the stretcher. The energy soaked into her armor, fused with the strange biometal woven through it. She began to float, limbs straightening slightly. The process didn't look mechanical. It looked personal. Jonah sat down cross-legged and muttered, Well, that's not intimidating. Nope. Just a floating alien woman in a magical techno cave being healed by a sentient operating system that apparently has a personal grudge against me. The voice returned, softer now. Subject integration, stable. Neural lattice reconstruction, progressing. Conscious uplink imminent. He leaned back against a curved wall and pulled a ration bar from his pack. No pressure or anything, but I really hope you wake up before we both get labeled as intruders and vaporized into interdimensional confetti. Time stretched. The chamber's humming grew softer, deeper, more harmonious. Ven floated, eyes closed now, her expression peaceful for the first time since he'd found her. He watched her chest rise and fall in steady rhythm. He peeled open the ration bar, took one bite, gagged, and tossed it behind him. You know what? Starvation's not so bad. The walls flickered again. Subject recovery, 82%. Language centers restored. Sensory feedback restored. Primary motor control, stabilizing. Jonah sat up. She's coming back? The chamber dimmed. The fibers of light receded. Ven floated gently to the floor. Her eyes opened. She sat up. Jonah blinked. Okay, so full-on miracle or just high-tier space medicine? She looked at him, opened her mouth, coughed once. Then, you talk too much. He stared. Was that a joke? She nodded. First of many. Jonah helped her stand, though it was clear she barely needed it. Her movements were still slow, but steady now, graceful. The long ears twitched slightly as if adjusting to the chamber's low-frequency hum. He smiled, couldn't help it. Welcome back. Ven looked around, her expression unreadable, then turned toward the floating crystal. Her voice was stronger now. How long? The system responded without hesitation. Injury sustained, 31.9 standard hours. Total system disruption, localized. Neural degradation, halted. Archive status, unknown. Jonah raised a hand. Did you say archive? Please tell me there's not a library of ancient alien secrets just casually hiding in your moon cave. Ven's look was the kind usually reserved for someone asking if gravity was still real. He sighed. Of course there is. Of course you're a walking key to some forgotten galactic vault. Can't just be a regular wounded alien with a cool haircut. She touched his shoulder gently. Still grateful. He blinked. Wow, that almost sounded like a compliment. I'm still learning sarcasm. You'll fit in fine. The crystal pulsed one last time. Next directive, retrieval of the archive. Warning, opposition likely. Hostiles inbound. Jonah groaned. You people really need to work on your hospitality. Ven smiled faintly. You're not going to leave, are you? He picked up his rifle. Lady, I passed up evac, snacks, and a shower for this. I'm in. They turned together, facing the dark passage that had opened along the far wall. Jonah muttered, Let's go find your library before it finds us. Jonah stared down the newly revealed tunnel like it had just insulted his fashion choices. That's not foreboding at all. Nope. Just a long, echoing hallway of doom conveniently opening after we heal the mysterious alien girl who definitely isn't carrying secrets that will cause galactic political upheaval or, explode. Ven walked ahead of him, more fluid now, though she still had a subtle stiffness to her gait. Her armor shimmered faintly in the pulsing light of the walls. She glanced over her shoulder. "You're mumbling again." "I'm narrating. It's how I cope." "You should upgrade your coping mechanisms." He jogged a few steps to catch up, huffing. "Right, sorry, I didn't take barely survived alien warfare, then spelunked into glowing ruins with a space elf as an elective." "Not elf. Aruvex." "Right, Aruvex. Space elf just rolls off the tongue better." They walked in silence for several minutes, the tunnel sloping gently downward, spirals of bioluminescent script crawling along the walls. At one point, the passage widened into an antechamber filled with floating, crystalline cubes slowly spinning in the air like hypnotic Rubik's cubes. Jonah reached out to touch one. Ven grabbed his wrist. "That's an archive lock. Touching it without intent will trigger a security sequence." He pulled his hand back. "Right, right. No unauthorized touching. Standard galactic policy. Good to know." Ven stepped forward, raised her hand, and the cubes responded, shifting, aligning, creating a delicate latticework of light and memory. Holograms flickered into being. Stars, alien cities, great trees taller than mountains, ships that bent around themselves in motion. Jonah whistled. "Okay, that's officially cooler than my entire species' history combined, except maybe for pizza." We nailed pizza. The hologram shifted to a star map. Dozens of systems blinked red. Ven's expression darkened. "What is it?" "The last positions of the Aravex outposts, before the collapse." He frowned. "Collapse? As in economic or apocalyptic?" She turned to him. "Yes." "Ah, one of those collapses." The hologram zoomed in on a single system, then a planet, then a location marked with a symbol Jonah hadn't seen before. A triangle of concentric rings with a pulsing dot at the center. "That's where we need to go." Define need. Because if you mean get vaporized by whatever buried civilization caused your people to collapse, I might vote no. It's the core archive, the last memory strand of the Arovex. If it still exists, it may hold what we need. Which is, she hesitated, a way to stop the reclaimers. Jonah blinked. That's a new term. Is it the friendly kind of reclaimer, or the kind that turns people into soup? The second kind. Of course. They resumed walking, the path narrowing again. Strange static began to interfere with Jonah's calm, even though it had been dead for hours. His wrist console buzzed erratically. "I think your archive is allergic to human tech. Or it's trying to warn us." "Of course it is. Because warning signs are so helpful after you're knee-deep in ancient cosmic secrets." At the end of the tunnel, they found a door. If a massive, rune-covered slab of transparent alloy that looked older than language could be called a door. Ven approached it, and her armor lit up like a bioluminescent jellyfish at a rave. "Authentication required," the wall intoned in 3 simultaneous voices. Ven held up her hand. "Aerovex Air, accessing memory strand Kellen Prime." There was a pause, a long one. Then the voices replied, "Partial match detected, genetic drift calculated, access permitted, with conditions." Jonah leaned in. "I never like it when access comes with conditions." The door slid open with a sound that was somewhere between a sigh and an ancient regret. Inside was a chamber unlike the others, spherical, lined with floating discs covered in blinking glyphs. At the center hovered a single orb of black light. "That's it," Jonah said. "The big secret of your people is a creepy floating dot?" Ven stepped toward it cautiously. "That's not the secret. That's the gatekeeper." The orb pulsed. "State the code." Ven hesitated, then spoke a phrase in her language that made Jonah's ears ring and his nose bleed just a little. The orb flickered, then dropped like a stone. It hit the floor and shattered into motes of data. The chamber lit up like a planetarium in overdrive, thousands of memories projecting at once. Wars, peace treaties, alien worlds, impossible machines. Jonah stared. "Okay, this is like watching Wikipedia have a nervous breakdown." Ven sifted through the images with a sweep of her hand. One moment a city, the next a battle in space, then a quiet meadow with a tree that looked suspiciously like it could walk if provoked. Then the images stopped. One remained, a being, humanoid but wrong, too smooth, too symmetrical. Its eyes glowed like tiny stars and its mouth was a perfect circle. It hovered above a planet, surrounded by black shapes, ships, maybe, or weapons. Jonah pointed. Friend of yours? Ven's face was stone. That's a Reclaimer Prime. He raised an eyebrow. Looks like it escaped from a math textbook. They purge anything considered corrupted or non-essential. That includes species, histories, planets. Cool. And they're coming here? They're already in system. We triggered the archive. They'll know. Jonah pinched the bridge of his nose. Of course they will. We light one ancient data candle and suddenly the space murder bots come sniffing around. Ven took a deep breath. We have to leave, now. Where to? There's a ship buried beneath the archive, a retrieval-class vessel. If it still functions, we can use it. Jonah followed her as she sprinted toward a descending stairwell that had appeared behind the orb's remains. Next time, maybe pick a vault that doesn't come with an incoming apocalypse. She glanced at him. Next time, don't bring a spoon to a space war. It was tactical. It was plastic. They disappeared into the lower levels, alarms already beginning to echo faintly from above. Jonah muttered, Yup, definitely and over my head. Again. Ven didn't argue. She didn't have to. The floor beneath them began to vibrate. Something ancient had noticed them, and it was waking up. The ship was buried like a secret too important to trust the surface. Jonah nearly broke an ankle jumping the last few steps of the descending stairwell, and the first thing he said was, You ever think maybe your ancestors were a bit too dramatic? Ven pressed her hand to a nearby console. The wall shivered. Ship entombment was a defense protocol, she said. Prevented hostile reclamation. Jonah raised an eyebrow. Right, very subtle. Nothing screams, we definitely don't have a spaceship here, like an entire planet trying to kill intruders. The ceiling above them rumbled, deep, angry vibrations that weren't content with staying metaphorical. I think the Reclaimers found the front door. Ven's armor pulsed. The console came alive with glyphs, lines of cascading code that folded and unfolded like origami made of starlight. Ship name Kevinar, long-range scout class, last pilot, dead. Last mission, redacted. Excellent. Jonah stepped cautiously toward the ramp that had unfolded from beneath the ship. Okay, rule of thumb, if the last mission is redacted, maybe skip digging through the glove compartment. They climbed aboard. The interior lit up on its own. Sleek, cold, faintly humming. A chair spun toward Jonah on its own. He looked at it warily. Oh no, not again. Last time something spun toward me like that, it took my DNA and tried to convince me I was a toaster. Ven took the pilot's seat. This one only takes your sarcasm. Should be empty soon. Har har. The ship's systems activated one by one. Flight control, atmosphere stabilization, defense grid. A holographic face appeared in front of them, pale blue and twitching. Welcome back, Aerovex pilot. Unauthorized biological detected. Do you wish to disintegrate? Jonah gave a finger gun. Hard pass on the vaporizing. Let's just pretend I'm an emotional support human. The AI blinked. Classification updated. Comfort entity. Ven didn't look at him. That fits. Outside, the tremors grew more violent. Jonah turned to the rear view feed and saw the first shadow slide across the opening. Black metal, shifting parts, something that looked suspiciously like a mouth, and a drill had a baby. Okay, I vote we fly now. Right now. Actually, 10 minutes ago would have been ideal. Ven's fingers danced across the interface. Engine's cold. It's been dormant for centuries. Jonah ran to a panel and kicked it. It opened. He stared at it, then shouted, You know, this would be easier if someone labeled things with words instead of runes that look like a spider sneezed on a wall. Ven stood. Do you trust me? That's a weird time to ask. Are you about to jump out the airlock or propose marriage? She placed her palm on his chest. You fixed me. Now I fix this. She moved toward the core room at the back of the ship, light trailing from her armor, like it remembered where it was going. Jonah watched as the entire vessel began to change tone. responding to her presence like it had been waiting for her all this time. Comfort entity to control. This is me trusting, he said under his breath, taking the co-pilot seat. The reclaimers began breaching the archive walls. Alarms screamed. One of the drones fired a beam that sliced through rock like butter in a microwave. Ven entered the ship's neural cradle. The moment her body connected, the ship surged with power. Lights flared. Gravity shifted. Jonah gripped the console as the vessel lifted. From the AI, power restored. Navigation aligned. Please remain seated. Also, don't touch anything. The Kevinar roared to life, rising through the chamber like an awakened god. Jonah whooped, "Yes, suck it, space bugs!" Behind them, the archive collapsed in on itself, swallowed by a reclaimer construct that looked like a praying mantis had fused with a skyscraper. "Course set for Slipstream," Ven's voice echoed from every surface. "Destination, Reclaimer Prime." Jonah's eyes widened. "Wait, hold up. That's not escape. That's fly into the hornet nest." "We have the archive data. If we get to their nexus, we can upload the failsafe." "Failsafe? You mean the part you didn't tell me about?" "It's in my blood," he paused. "That's either poetic or extremely horrifying." The ship bent space around itself and slipped into FTL like it was born for it. The stars became lines. Time stretched. Jonah sat back, quiet for once. Ven's voice softened. "I'm not who I was before this. That war, the collapse, losing everything. I thought it broke me." Jonah nodded. "You were broken, but you didn't stay that way. Because of you." He smiled faintly. "I'm just a comfort entity, remember?" The ship exited Slipstream above a dark world. A vast structure floated in orbit, black and pulsing. The Reclaimer Prime. Ven stood beside him now, armored, calm, ready. "We get close. I transmit. You keep them off me." Jonah loaded his rifle. "Just like the Academy taught us, when infiltrating a genocidal AI fortress with your alien friend, always bring snacks and backup sarcasm." The ship plunged. Drones rose to meet them. Fire raked across the hull. Jonah shouted, fired, cursed, repeated. Ven moved like lightning, channels of code flowing from her armor to the console. They landed hard. Jonah was thrown from his seat. He coughed. "Still alive. 10 out of 10 landing. Would not recommend." Ven stood in the open hatch, data swirling around her. "Now," she said. Jonah covered her. Plasma bolts seared past. He dropped 3 drones, ducked another. She reached the core terminal. Her body glowed. She touched the node. The station screamed. Light flooded out. A deep hum filled everything, like the song of a dying star. Jonah turned to run, then stopped. Ven stood at the center of the light. Whole, tall, changed. The Reclaimer Prime shook, then imploded in silence. Later, back aboard the Kevinar, Jonah sat quietly beside her. "You okay?" "I'm free." "Free is good," she smiled. "And you?" "I think I'll retire. Maybe open a sandwich shop. No archives, no AI, definitely no mantis robots." Ven reached out and touched his hand. "Not yet," he sighed. "Yeah, okay, one last mission." Outside, the stars waited.